Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Thomas Park. Welcome back to another video. Let's just jump straight to it. As you know, here on the channel, I've reviewed data broker removal services. I've even made a tier list of the various ones. I've used almost all of them, and I've compared them to find which is the best one for you. That said, there have been some websites making critical articles on some of these services lately, kind of insinuating that they're not really worth using, and you're better just spending your own time doing opt-out to 200 different websites. Just a little message here, guys, before we start off this video. If you're interested in these data broker removal services, I was probably one of the first people to review these services on YouTube and really start discussing them at length. If you want my recommended option, it's going to be incognito. I'll be putting a link for that in the description down below. It has the biggest budget. It's backed by some really big companies like Surfshark. It really is kind of like a peripheral product from them. You can even get bundled in if you want. So I'll be putting a link down there with a discount. Just keep in mind, this one is not mentioned on their study. Who knows? Maybe they didn't mention it on the study because it proved it was actually more effective than doing it yourself. That's just my theory, though. Anyways, let's get into the discussion. But let's go ahead and look at the merits of the study, who's behind the study, and what some other YouTubers have said about the study. First up, though, the people who made the study are Consumer Reports. You might be thinking of them as a trustworthy, reliable source of information when it comes to studies, but I would hate to break it to you, I don't really think they are. So guys, the people behind this study is Consumer Reports, more specifically someone called Yale Grauer. Funny thing is, I'm pretty sure this person blocked me on Twitter a number of years ago because I criticized her VPN study, which just happened to also miss some of the best VPNs out there, and created like tried to make like a comprehensive study, but if you miss several VPNs, it's not really that comprehensive, is it? Additionally, that same study didn't look at a lot of things that I look at when it comes to VPNs. I'll discuss that in a little bit, but I do kind of want to talk about something funny when it comes to Consumer Reports to kind of discuss their credibility. I think Consumer Reports isn't really that credible of a brand or just a website in general. It just seems like one of those websites that kind of is using kind of like weird isolated studies to kind of make clickbait articles, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Now, I'm not really a fan of Rivian or anything like that, or associated with the brand or anything like that. I just noticed this when looking at cars and stuff like that with some of these different websites, and I found it pretty funny. So here you go. Rivian listed by Consumer Reports as one of the 2024's worst brands. So this car is pretty well reviewed. I've watched a couple of reviews on YouTube of it just because it's a cool looking car. And I found this article saying it was one of the worst reliable brands. So one of the worst brands that they've made several TikToks and various things discussing how Rivians just kind of suck. But if you look on their website, you can also find Rivian earns most loved brand title from Consumer Reports. So you can see they're really playing both sides of the angle. It's like, how can these things be simultaneously true? It's just pretty stupid, right? That's like me saying Surfshark or NordVPN earn worst VPN, but also people love it the most. It just doesn't really make sense. But we can also take a look at their VPN methodology. Like I said, this is made by someone called Yale Grauer. I don't really find a very reputable source when it comes to privacy and security at large, because I just find these studies fundamentally flawed. I would say one of my main problems just on the surface level of these studies is because usually on these websites, it's like the title is Molvat iVPN, Mozilla VPN, top consumer reports VPN testing. It doesn't say that something like Molvat iVPN, Mozilla score highest in specifically privacy or something like that. It's not as quickly clickbaitable as a title. Of course, they do have this subtext here that does clarify that. But at the end of the day, if you understand how VPNs work, you all know that they all pretty much use the same encryption models. They use the same kind of servers. A lot of them share the same servers. They all use WireGuard. It's not like any of these services really even designed WireGuard. Jason Donenfeld made the VPN protocol itself. They all are pretty much uncrackable. There's nothing that can really crack these VPNs. It just comes down to minute little differences. You know, maybe this website used one more cookie, this and that, those kind of things. Maybe they kept a little bit more log for this little period of time and then purged it. Maybe some have the data for just a little bit longer, but really kind of focusing on those things are kind of losing the bigger picture of why you should pick one VPN or another. And that's why the title itself doesn't really specify that individual kind of test here, in my opinion. For example, the list of VPNs they do look at is definitely flawed. If you see here the list of VPNs they made a couple of years ago, it did include several big name offerings like TorGuard, Hide.me, and some of the other VPNs out there. This is a very short list, and my list and comparison tables sometimes in the past have accounted for 40 plus VPNs. Nowadays they don't account for as much because not that many VPNs are active anymore, but it's funny to see even VPNs like Mozilla VPN on here, and Mulvad, while the owner is listed differently, but Mozilla VPN is just a white labeled shittier Mulvad. Let's theoretically say a weakness in my argument could be, hey Tom, they're just testing the privacy and security and stuff like that. None of the other stuff matters. Now, you could even argue that this entire study is flawed because the VPN they picked is one of the best ones, Mozilla. I mean, just look on Reddit. This guy says, why is Mozilla VPN so bad? This guy says they charge twice as much for the same service if you just want to subscribe for 1 month. And even if you pick a long-term subscription, it's still the same price as Mulvad, which you could cancel at any time. So there you go, $10 a month. Mulvad is only $5 a month, and then if you subscribe annually, it's $60. But you could just subscribe to Mulvad month per month, and it would still be the same price. Look at this: Mozilla VPN bad. Mozilla is just a white label repackage of Mulvad using Mulvad servers. So yeah. This guy says he's also disappointed. You can see lots of people being disappointed. There really just isn't really any reason to use it compared to something like Mulvad. The fact the study does say it's the best one in their title. Oh, jeez. And yet somehow it has managed to top the list of this article. If we could find the thing here it is. Mulvad iVPN and Mozilla VPN top consumer reports VPN testing. So literally Mulvad it's okay VPN at what it does, but to list Mozilla VPN as a top rated VPN when it's literally just a white labeled version of Mulvad with less features and stuff like that, everyone in the privacy space knows that Mozilla VPN is a shittier Mulvad. The fact that they didn't even really seem to realize that in their test speaks a lot. Additionally, this test really only looked at privacy and security. VPNs are also used for a lot of other things when it comes to unblocking geo restrictions. They didn't really look at price or anything like that. They didn't really consider that iVPN is 2 to 3 times as expensive as other VPNs. Additionally, the metrics for their privacy and security can be argued. Just because they think it's more private and secure doesn't really mean that they are. I mean, I feel like some of the biggest VPNs out there that have more customers like Nord and Surfshark would find a lot of conflicts with their research. And that's not to say that this study doesn't have any merit, and certainly VPNs can improve a lot. And this study fails to make any mention of stuff like performance metrics. It doesn't analyze torrenting speed, like I said, unblocking capabilities, number of devices supported, application support, which is very important for users. Why would you use a VPN if it doesn't have the app you need on a specific device like Apple TV? It doesn't analyze anything like user experience, real world applicability, the various kind of features like mesh networking, like stuff like Nord provides, or bundled offerings that could give you even more privacy and security. It doesn't mention anything like customer support. Additionally, the kind of focus of the research paper is how VPN providers handle data at like more of a local level, but they don't really discuss about it at a server level, which is kind of critical for user privacy at large. So the paper itself, like I mentioned at the beginning, says it nailed it down from a list of 200 VPNs to 16, but it doesn't really specify how it did that. It just seems kind of arbitrary. But suffice to say, I do kind of think that this person who made the study is a little bit of a shill. If you look up their name with Mulvad, you'll see them promoting it for years and years and years on various different things. And that's fine. That's their opinion. And I don't really want you guys to harass this person or anything like that. I'm just kind of giving you the context of why I'm kind of annoyed. So that leads me to my next point, of course, who is responsible for this new kind of study. Well, you guessed it. Also, Yale Grauer. So let's go ahead and look at this study once again. What are my problems with it? Well, once again, it seems like they've conveniently left out some of the biggest and best number of data broker removal tools. And in fact, I don't really recommend any of these. I think all of these aren't really very good. I specifically see some that aren't included here. But Incogni is probably the biggest and best one. I've been reviewing it here on my channel. It's very affordable. It's got good family plans. It seems to have the most budget and capability, and it's not even in this study. I don't know how it was left out. For example, if you just look at Google search trends, you can see that Incogni is way bigger than just some of these options. It ranks 93 search results compared to Delete Me 64. Optory rates around 36. So it's around 3 times as big as Optory, getting pretty close to being 2 times as big as something like Delete Me. You could see like some of these areas, it's really quite, at this point it was 3 times bigger just a year ago or so. So the fact that they did not include the biggest one, it's like, why wouldn't they do that? My only theory is that maybe it disproves the study's results. Honestly, I can't think of any other reason why they would not include it. It just means that this study for me is not really valuable. It's kind of like if you went to go observe, hybrid cars, and you were trying to make a study about how effective they were, and just for some reason you decided not to include Toyota, despite the fact that they are probably the biggest maker of Priuses and hybrids and stuff like that. Additionally, this study was only made over 4 months, and I do think that with these services, usually you pay for up to a year. So I'm not sure why it only relegated the study to 4 months. It seems mostly like a budgetary thing. It seems like they really should have done this study for at least a year to see how effective these services are, because it can take some time. The bonus is you give these services your information, you pay for a year, and then after a year you see how well it's done. Not just a couple, 3 or 4 months. That's really not enough time to see how effective they are. This research study doesn't also really seem to imply how they picked the various services. It just says we use 7 people search services. These sites and services were selected in our partner, Tall Poppy, with the organization that builds. They picked people search sites that are generally most used in their categories. So yeah, I'm not really sure exactly why they skipped some of the big ones. So according to this study, the best one here was easy opt-outs. After 4 months, it removed 65%, and manual opt-outs removed 70%. So despite the fact that Optory provided 68, so they're not providing Incogni, which I do believe is the best one at this point. So let's say Incogni is anywhere between 68 and 70, then that would mean that this whole study seems to be pointless, because even with, let's say you picked Optory instead of something like Incogni, which is not included within this study, you really paid for a service that got you pretty much as good as you could by doing it yourself. This not only saves you time, it saves you money. In terms of like, time is money. Do you really want to spend hundreds of hours doing this in your own time to do this? No, that's like really the whole point. And these services never said that you couldn't do it yourself. The services said they're going to save you time. So if you want to spend hundreds of hours going to all these different websites, emailing them back and forth and stuff like that, just for a 2% increase, maybe on 1 to 2 sites no one's going to find, well, then by all means, go for the manual opt-out. But if this one they picked is just this close, I honestly find the whole point of the study kind of lame. It says right here, findings. As a whole, people search removal services are largely ineffective. Profiles removed in 4 months 68 and manuals only 70. Why? They also make a distinction that OneRep is also kind of advertising on some of these websites, but they don't specifically mention, they do mention the reporting, but this is a very isolated incident. And I even covered this on my channel, where this company pretty much was owning these websites and decided to make a company to remove this information from the websites. I don't think this speaks on the industry at large. I think this is an isolated incident, and I don't really think this study makes that clear enough. It seems like it kind of has more of a bias and objective to kind of get you to not use these services. Sort of how like the VPN study said to not use a lot of VPNs at the same time. And that's pretty it. The study really isn't too large. There are some more things I didn't go over, but nothing really too important. Basically, the findings of the study are that you can save a lot of time by subscribing to these services, and after 4 months, you're really going to only see a 2% difference between doing it yourself, saving a lot of time. In my opinion, that means they're worth it. Not only that, but they did not include Incogni, which is my favorite and best one. It's also cheaper than some of these other ones on this table here. Another funny thing is, though, I've seen some YouTubers like Techlore, just an amazing YouTuber who always has the best takes. He is saying like, oh, I didn't, I thought these services were better. But watch this little clip here.
Us, and we need to now reevaluate where these services take place in our workflow. Do you use one of these services?
I do, and ironically enough, I use easy opt-outs.
Really? That's funny. So I use Delete Me. Delete Me paid for my first year, I think, but I've paid since then. So like I'm an optional paying user for Delete Me. I'm definitely unimpressed to hear this for obvious reasons. Like I would, in my head, think that it's a lot more reliable. And also they do a good job of like showing that they're reliable. Like that's one of the things they do. They do like this quarterly checkup, and they tell you, oh, like, we removed all your data from all these websites. So you just happen to go with easy.
That's pretty funny. Thing is, he does not disclose that he did the kind of like sponsorships and advertising for Delete Me. He kind of makes it seem like he's just a user. They just happened to give him a free year of it. But he doesn't even mention that he like advertised for them and now is kind of trying to be like, these services suck, despite the fact that, you know, he was advertising for them. If you don't believe me, look here on his things. He did a review here 3 years ago. And then he did like a interview here, and I do believe in various videos he's had them as a sponsor. Let me just look around. It probably won't take that long to look. Okay, here we go. Here's one where he talks about them, and of course he is mentioning them. I think people in his comments even criticized how it's kind of like an ad. You know, you need to clearly declare this is a sponsored video. You can skip this. It's a 10-minute ad. So, video reported for not declaring your sponsorship would delete me per YouTube's guidelines. Now watch this. He just doesn't even mention that and acts like he's also completely blindsided by these services, wasn't being paid by them.
Very interesting stuff. And really interesting article, and also something that I don't know what Nate does. I do use one of these services. So when I say I use these services, I don't make that up. And I know Jonah uses a service as well. And so for us as well, this is big news.
The reason Jonah probably uses these is probably because he got a free year of it as well. Pretty much Techlore's take. It's funny because I'm like 100% sure he hasn't like checked out really in the other ones. He's never reviewed any of the other ones. He's made like 5 videos just kind of shilling Delete Me, and now he probably sees it from the table. Maybe it's not the best one out there. You know, some of the ones on the table got 68% effective. If you did it yourself, spent tons of hours on it, it'd be 70% effective. So yeah, and like I said, it didn't include some of the best out there. So it's just kind of funny to see this guy's take on it. Anyways, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see you again very soon.